Welcome back to our show. It's time for us to welcome in Scott Pioli. We like to call him our resident front office analyst. Anything that goes down on the field, we have different people we tap into. When we want to take it upstairs to the C-suite, if you will, we go to Scott because we're always curious about the business side of things and the personnel side of things. Scott, good morning to you. Yesterday, big news is the Cowboys finally did a handshake with CeeDee Lambs, and a lot of money was exchanged for his services at wide receiver in a 4-year contract extension. Other than getting CeeDee back in the building, why is this important in the football landscape, Scott?
Well, first of all, Jamie, I wasn't surprised this deal got done at all. Much like Kyle, this is the time of year where a lot of important and big deals get done because teams at this point in time are really trying to fit a lot of the different pieces that have to do with their overall salary cap. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But to me, getting CeeDee Lamb done was so critical for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. They knew that this was a really good player that fits all of the things that are important to them, not only from a positional standpoint in terms of his skills and his tools and his ability, he's a player that the organization really, really cares about. So this didn't surprise me at all. This will have a ripple effect on the football team, though. It will have a ripple effect on the roster, but I don't think it will impact the quarterback position. The quarterback position, they're going to get Dak done because when you have a good quarterback, you've got to keep him. They're not going to be out looking for another quarterback. So again, I really think that this is going to be one of those situations where they got it done, but it's not going to impact Dak Prescott at all.
All right, Scott. So look, we got to stay in the NFC right now, but switching, to the NFC East or North rather. We got to talk the
I still
Lions.
call it the Central, Akbar. It's okay.
I remember the Central. But you were a big believer in the Lions before it was like even cool. And you visited with the Bears and the Packers training camps. What do you make of the NFC North or the Central, whichever you want to call it?
Akbar, I think this is the best, the toughest, and the most loaded division in the NFL. Each of the top 3 teams, and I'm going to say, as you mentioned, I was at the Packers, I was at the Bears, I've studied the Lions very closely. I think right now the Vikings are a little bit off because of the quarterback situation and the overall makeup of their roster. But this is going to be a really tough division where teams are actually going to be knocking one another off. But through and through, those 3 teams, the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers, not only do they have really good quarterbacks, I understand that the rookie quarterback Caleb Williams is on the come, but they have rosters that are strong at the top level. They've also got depth. So to me, when I look at this division, this is going to be one heck of a division to watch this year. And certainly, again, as this season starts, before injuries and before some of the unknowns, this is the best division in football, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. The old black and blue division is back.
I love it. Amen. Hell yes. And I was raised on the Central. People forget the Buccaneers used to be in the same division as the Bears and the Packers. That was the black and blue, and I love that it's back. Scott, you've also been working with the International Player Pathway Program. There's an incredible play from the preseason that I don't think enough people have seen. We're going to go to Saints-Titans. All right, this just went down. Roll the videotape, if you please. The Titans are going to try a field goal at the end of the first half, which is fielded because it comes up woefully short by Samson Nakua. That's Puka's brother. And he's going to do 106 yards. But watch the highlighted player. That is Thomas Odukoya of the Titans. Remember, there's no time left on the clock. 0-0 going into halftime. He runs about 400 yards and knocks out Nakua at the 1-yard line. It's truly an amazing coverage play and hustle play. We love DK Metcalf running down Budda Baker. This is tight end from the Netherlands in a preseason game, selling out to run and knock him out of bounds. A great, great play. And as far as I understand, Scott, you know a little bit about the guy who made it.
Yeah, and Kyle, I got to tell you, I'm so glad that we brought this up because this was absolutely, without a doubt, my favorite play of preseason week 3. Thomas Odukoya, who comes from the Netherlands, started playing when he was a youth, came to the United States, and went to 2 junior colleges and then to Eastern Michigan. But what I loved about this play, this encapsulates everything that preseason football is about. Here's a guy who knows that he's fighting for a roster spot somewhere between 45 and 53. He knows he's a backup player, so he knows he has to do something that's going to be special teams related. That's how you make the roster. That's how you stay in the NFL. Former NFL wide receiver Chris Durham, years ago in 2021, was up at Eastern Michigan doing some scouting for the International Player Program, and he saw Thomas play. He brought his name up. So we brought him to the 2022 IPP training camp out in Arizona where LaCharles Bentley had his program. He worked there. This guy that year was one of my favorite players. Great interview. He's everything that you want a football player to be, not just physically, but makeup-wise. And one of the other things I want to bring up is there's a gentleman by the name of Will Bryce and James Cook. Those two guys run the NFL IPP training camp. And every single year, one of the top plays that they show them, and they tell the players, this is who you need to be. They go back to the 2006 game with Benjamin Watson, the Patriots, chasing Champ Bailey from one side of the field all the way, I think it's 93 yards, I want to say he goes. And they tell these young players coming from the international player program, they show this play and they say, guys, if you're going to make it in this league, you're not as skilled, you're not as ready, you're not as experienced. These are the kind of plays that you have to make. And I say kudos to Thomas for paying attention to those meetings and living out exactly what Will Bryce and James Cook told them. And to me, this again was one of the most incredible moments of this past weekend. And guys, and I'm telling you folks, this is what football is about.
Scott, I know that everybody's aware of what today is in the NFL, and it's a difficult day around the league. It's probably the only day in the year that, as a player, you hope that this thing doesn't ring. As a player who's been in those situations, as rosters get cut down today, what is that like from the front office perspective?
You know, Manti, it's a tough day because, again, as you mentioned, we're the ones that have to deliver the news. And you've got all these people that you've cultivated relationships that you know have done everything that they need to make the team. So when you have to let players go or trade players or move on from a player in whatever capacity that's going to happen, it's upsetting. So it's a really tough day. Yet you're trying to balance it that you're creating your 53-man roster and it's supposed to be an exciting time. So there's this clash of emotions that goes on. But then while this clash of emotions is going on, you have to think about so many different financial things. Because let's remember, all the season long, since the new league year started, you were only counting the top 51 contracts on your roster. By this week, you're going to be counting not only the top 53 players, but you're going to be counting 16 practice squad players, every player that you have to do an injury settlement with, and all players that end up on injured reserve. So what happens, again, it's 53 players plus the 4 players that maybe are on injured reserve. Then when you bring in the 16 practice squad players, you're talking about players that are making a minimum of $12,500 a week. And times 18, that's another 225. You multiply that by 16 players, you're looking at about $3.6 million of cap space that gets eaten up between today and the beginning of the the new season. So you're having to make a ton of decisions, again, that have to do with emotional components that you have to compartmentalize and do what's best for your football team. It's a really, really complicated time for so many reasons.
Yeah, Scott, you talked about the emotional component, and I got to ask you got to keep it real with me now on this one. I've been cut several times, and so, there's a language that is used, and I often wonder, do the general managers, do the coaches, do they really care? Because they always end the cut by saying, hey, if you need anything, reach out to me. Man, that's a dang on lie. If I called you after that, you ain't picking up my phone call. Be honest. Now, keep it real with me. Do they care? And if I reached out, do they really pick up?
No, Akbar, here's what I'll say. I think it depends on the individual. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is my relationships with players that I had to have those difficult conversations with. I remember having to move on when Joe Andruzzi left us at the Browns, when Willie McGinnis, a dear, dear friend of mine before and now since, that we had to let go somewhere else. Lawyer Malloy, player after player. And I've maintained those relationships because that's who I am and that's what I'm about. And Akbar, if we were together and I said that to you, I would have said it and meant it. Because again, here's what I always realize is just like you have to cut players, I'm going to get fired someday. And I did get fired. And it was important to me to know that I handled people and treated people the way that I wanted to be treated. Again, it's an uncomfortable conversation. You disagree with players. And here's the thing, when you say goodbye sometimes, I think it's important, and I learned this at the Cleveland Browns because I listened to the people around me when they spoke to players, And something that resonated with me that I didn't always necessarily agree with was I believe that when you let a player go and they're not right for your system or your culture or your offensive or defensive philosophy, that doesn't mean that that player isn't any good. That means that that player isn't necessarily a fit for your situation, your circumstance. They can go somewhere else and become a good NFL player. So I'm a big believer in that, but maintaining the relationships is critical. Again, one of the things I'm most happy about in my career is I have so many good relationships with players that I did tell the truth and have shown respect afterwards.
Scott, to your point, you may have gotten let go from your job, but then you got hired with a different team and then a different team, and you had those guys that if they handled maybe those tough conversations with maturity and respect, you knew the kind of player you were going to get at the next building you were in. So it all works in a full circle at this point.
Yeah.
Scott Pioli, it is a tough day. We don't like cut down day, but we enjoy talking to you always because you bring this extra layer of insight that we always appreciate here on GMFB. We will talk to you next week when real football is being played, Scott. Here we go. We're entering the